All right. Good afternoon, folks. I'm News 6 meteorologist David Nazario back with your tropical update. We are tracking Tropical Storm Rafael that's currently ravaging the island of Jamaica. Thankfully, no more than just a higher end tropical storm, although we know that's enough to do some circumstantial and physical damage down there. They've already had enough to deal with this hurricane season with close passes from the likes of Helene, for example, forming in the same general source region, as well as Hurricane Beryl. Once upon a time, it feels like back at the very beginning of this hurricane season, the anomaly of a Category 5 storm that was. We're going to give you all the latest information on what Raphael is doing, as well as another area or two maybe that we're tracking in the tropics currently. So with that being said, let's say hello to a few folks. I have the Just Weather and the News 6 YouTube channel cranking right now. I see a few viewers in there. Aaron, Scrooge McDuck, Milagros, good to see you. Kevin, David, good to see you again. You just had you on the Instagram live not too long ago. Dream Talking, Colleen, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. No chat in the News 6 channel just yet. Feel free to drop a question or a comment in there to say hello, where you're tuning in from, if anything. Hoping to see a nice turnout and see what's going on in your neck of the woods. But with that being said, let's get started. So here's a look at our latest National Hurricane Center outlook, and I'll take you in close so we can see. We have two different areas we're watching. One, the elephant in the room being Raphael. You can see it parked right off the immediate southwest coast of Jamaica, and we'll get into the latest advisory with that as well. But then we're also watching that other AOY that might try to cross paths with Raphael. Of course, naturally, a little bit further in time, that 0 for 20 split up there that's headed towards the Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas could once again try to play a role in Florida's weather. We're going to be watching that very closely over the next couple of days to see if we get any more model support or any kind of continued organization with that feature as we go over the next 3 to 5 days, and then see if those 7-day chances between now and what would it be next Tuesday, the days are kind of blurring together. It's election day, so naturally have all that hubbub going on in the background. So we're going to be watching that very closely. Now, moving right along, let's go ahead and get over to the latest information on Raphael. So first and foremost, this is going to be our latest forecast track. Let me go ahead and double check National Hurricane Center. That's a bit of an oopsie on my part. I didn't have the actual advisory pulled up. It's separate. We're currently still looking at max sustained winds of 60 miles an hour, 50 knots sustained winds with a central pressure of 994 millibars. And this feature has been somewhat slow to deepen, which is a good thing. It really hasn't rapidly intensified like a few others were alluding to on the social medias, or even as the hurricane models had predicted, thinking this would be a major hurricane at this point. So you can see that per the latest advisory, we are just west of the island of Jamaica, headed towards Little Cayman. The Cayman Islands are right up next. And if you caught our previous discussion, not only a couple of days ago, I had mentioned that I did think National Hurricane Center was just a bit on the conservative side. It turns out they are now seeing it as well. They're thinking it will be a Category 1 hurricane on approach to the Cayman Islands before making landfall into Cuba. And I'll go ahead and stop my presentation here so I can take you in for a bird's eye view. Take a look at the timestamps here. So there's Raphael, the center, starting to finally take that symmetrical appearance on, with the convection wrapping around and the upper level cloud cover wrapping around that center of circulation. We're developing that circular shape that we typically see with tropical cyclones. And then before the end of the day today, we are thinking, which it's a no-brainer. I'll show you the visible satellite once we get into the second half of this live stream. It's a no-brainer. This feature is going to continue to intensify into a Category 1, possibly a Category 2 after moving past the Cayman Islands here and getting up close and personal with the western side of Cuba. From there, if you notice, the cone has once again expanded. I'm not too sure why it is that they're still having this well off to the west. Coming up right after this, I have our spaghetti plots, a couple of different internal spaghetti plots that we can share with you all. But regardless, where we stand right now, National Hurricane Center is still thinking this could be approaching Louisiana as a weakening tropical storm. So that's good news. I'll make sure to take you in nice and close so you can see. 7 a.m. Sunday, as the sun's coming up this upcoming weekend, we might have a tropical storm Rafael off the immediate boot of Louisiana, preparing for a landfall. Now, I honestly do think we're going to see a bit more of an eastward nudge in this track. Right now, currently, when I show you the visible satellite shot, we are hugging the right side of the cone. We are on the right side of the ensemble. We're on the right side of the model guidance, on the right side of the National Hurricane Center cone. And I really do think that if you're in Panama City, Pensacola, Mobile, Alabama, and Biloxi, Mississippi, you still want to keep a close eye on this because I do believe that there are going to be some wobbles to the east. So with that being said, let's move on to our water vapor. Now, this is why we're thinking that I was almost going to say Milton. I'm still hung up on that smorgasbord of an event that was. But this is why we're thinking that Raphael, as it moves into the Gulf of Mexico, is going to start to weaken. We have a lot more wind shear, and take a look at all that dry air that's up there. We have some of the tropical moisture associated with the tropical cyclone moving up into the Gulf. That's also trying to influence our weather here in central Florida. But all in all, the Gulf of Mexico is not what it once was back in the likes of August, September, and even October. We're starting to see more of the frontal systems coming down. And if you look, what is really steering it here, and I'm glad, this is why I love water vapor satellite shots so much, and I'll make sure that you guys can see clearly. What we have going on over the Great Plains that has sparked severe weather action, some isolated tornadoes, strong thunderstorms, straight line winds, and occasional bouts of hail. We have a trough over the Great Plains coming down across into the southern United States, working its way into the western Gulf. And if you notice over the southeast and the mid-Atlantic, we have that ridge, that anticyclone, that dominating area of high pressure that's going to keep Raphael on a northwest trajectory for at least a little bit longer. And then we're really going to have to see what the interaction between the trough and the ridge, getting sandwiched between the two, does to this system as it works its way off towards the north and west. So here's a look at the spaghetti plots. As we get these rolling through time, this is one particular batch that we have. And if you look, once again, we're starting to see the panhandle of Florida and even the peninsula of Florida coming back into play here, which is very interesting because for the last couple of days, we've been looking at these spaghetti models and they've all been kind of converged on Louisiana, Mississippi, maybe one or two stray model members going towards Pensacola, Eglin Air Force Base. But you can see here now, we're starting to see that expanding out effect, which is troublesome this close in the forecast. We're maybe 80 to 96 hours out between now and a landfall, and we don't like to see that on our models. I'll show you some of our actual internal data here. This is what we typically have on our hurricane app. You can kind of see the same thing in these spaghetti plots. If you look, we have some outlandish members taking it off to the southwest, back down towards the Bay of Campeche. That's not going to happen. But if you notice, we have one rogue member that's actually east of Florida. We have one that comes into St. Petersburg, one, unfortunately, into the Big Bend. But if you look, and I'll take you down in for a closer look and bring up some of my telestrator objects here, our convergence is now in this area. It was originally back over here, but notice how we've jogged off towards the east just a little bit. And I do anticipate that that's probably going to continue at least for a little bit longer. We're going to see some gentle tugs off towards the east. But, you know, again, we're not super concerned here in central Florida, and we're not looking for an actual landfall in our neck of the woods, which is good news. This is going to be that upper-level steering pattern. So you can see that anticyclone, the high pressure over the southwest Atlantic, and that trough that's up over the Great Plains, moving into the Ohio, Mississippi valleys and the southern plains. We're starting to see that converging in the winds. I'll pull up my telestrator again so you guys can see. Whoops, I always accidentally do that. Let me bring us back to the actual chart. There we go. And if you look, I want you paying attention to what's happening in our winds here and what's happening here. So as this trough continues to move its way off towards the east, this convergent wind flow, see how the winds are coming together right around New Orleans and Mobile, Mississippi, Biloxi, Mississippi, that's going to carefully nudge off towards the east a little bit, which is why I do think that a panhandle landfall is still on the table. Is that something I'm predicting? No, but we need to be exploring all possibilities because we have a very, very rapidly evolving pattern that's over the United States right now. And on top of that, if you take a look at our internal model here, I'll take you through time just a little bit so we can see. There's the front. You can see all the thunderstorm activity through parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, and then especially that cooler air, the bluer arrows going on through Dallas, Houston, portion, or I should say a large majority of Texas. And then we have what's called return flow, those red pips, those red wind arrows coming up out of the south over Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. And so as you go through time, notice how that front continues to move east and the converging winds begin to focus more so between Pensacola and New Orleans. Before, they were back over most of Louisiana and Mississippi. Now you can make a case that the panhandle of Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi, parts of Louisiana are still in play, but that's going to be the focal point. That's where we'll want to watch for that pinch zone to where that storm could possibly be driven up. And then coming up after the break here in about a minute, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about what's happening, but I don't want to miss this graphic before we cut that for just a brief moment. So if you look here, we're going to go quickly through time, and I want to show you the rainfall that could possibly be associated with Raphael as it starts to make its trajectory into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. Now, this doesn't go too far out. This is our in-house higher resolution Barron model, but you can kind of get the gist of it. As it enters the southeast Gulf of Mexico, our rainfall totals are going to go from half an inch to, you can see, 3/4 of an inch there in Tampa, up to between 2 to 4 inches. And now, unfortunately, as we all know, because of Helene and Milton, we already had gratuitous amounts of rainfall, generous amounts. We've already had enough for the rest of the year. This is going to add to those totals and those already high water levels, whether it be a river, a body of water, a lake, or any kind of standing water that may still be out there. So coming up after the break, we're going to talk a little bit more exactly about what this means for us in Central Florida and try to dial in exactly where this system could go, as well as some of the key takeaways that you and your loved ones need to know as we get closer and closer to the potential arrival of Raphael, despite the weakening in the Gulf of Mexico, as well as what could still be in store for us over the next 2 weeks in the Caribbean and the rest of the tropical basin. We'll see you again very soon, folks. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Alrighty, everybody, a quick 2-minute break. That went by very quickly, to tell you the truth. It felt more like 30 seconds to collect myself and get back to it. So there are a couple of hot topics that I want to hit for the back end of this segment. We're going to talk the winds, naturally, because I know that's on everyone's mind. We're also going to talk storm surge, because during a very casual Instagram live stream, I had a number of viewers asking about potential storm surge for the Keys, for Southwest Florida, and the West Coast that have already been pummeled by Debbie back in August, and then the back-to-back hurricanes of Helene and Milton. So I have a bit of good news that we're going to go into here. So real quick, oh, whoops, there we go. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this. Let me go ahead and expand. There we go. So this is where we sit currently, and I love this tool because you can see that pinch zone that I told you about between the front that's working its way through Arkansas and Louisiana right now. and all the easterly flow that's providing Florida with rip current and small craft advisories along the East Coast. And you can see where that turn in the winds from east to northeast, or I should say northwest, is more so happening over New Orleans and parts of Mississippi right now. And actually, I should say that's southeasterly winds. I almost dorked that up big time. And as we go through time, notice how the front starts to move slowly but surely further and further towards the east. It starts to get caught up and button up against the upper level ridge that's still in place over the southeast United States. And as a result, it starts to lose a little bit of its steam. And at the surface, we start to see the winds wrapping more so around Raphael. Now, right off the rip, it looks like this is a fairly menacing setup. It looks like tropical storm, if not almost hurricane conditions for southern Florida. I can tell you, rest assured, that is not the case. First off, we're looking at a wind gust product here, so these are going to be intermittent winds around the center of circulation. And Raphael is very, very small in terms of its core. It's very reminiscent of Milton. It's a smaller, compact system. So we will have a very breezy next couple of days ahead of us. This is Thursday, very early morning. So winds will start to pick up for the southern Florida peninsula and especially the Florida Keys as we go through the day tomorrow, back end of Wednesday into very early morning Thursday. That is when we will likely see tropical storm warnings issued for the Florida Keys and maybe some rip current advisories down there for the southwest portion of the peninsula. However, if you look at the component, the actual orientation of the winds, notice they're all blowing this way. They're still out of the east. And this is absolutely back against the actual orientation of Florida. So for those of you who have been concerned about coastal flooding or, dare I say, storm surge, more flooding brought on by storm surge, since the compact nature of Raphael will keep the lowest pressure well off our coast, the waters will likely not come up. And because we have winds blowing away from the peninsula, that's also going to stop any high waves from trying to push water inland, which is excellent news. That's good news. And if it continues on this current track, we might see little to no influence altogether. So now, this is one of my favorite products. This is our color-coded tropical depression probability. And the reason I bring this up is because, once again, we're watching Raphael. You can see that dark red shade there over eastern or western Cuba into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, headed into the central Gulf. But then if you look back behind it, we have this feature here, and then this area of tropical wave activity that you're probably going to see posted on social media. The GFS has a lot of fun with this system once it gets into the central Caribbean. Please pay no attention to that. It's one run. We have no trends, no confidence that we're going to get such a ridiculous outcome from there. And I'm putting extra energy in that because I already have you lovely folks messaging me offline, messaging some of the Pinpoint team. Hey, there's a Category X in the middle of the Caribbean a week after Raphael. What do? Well, we don't panic and we don't worry just yet, okay? We've been seeing a lot of these social media sillies for some strange reason over the last couple of weeks, from Nadine to Patty and now Raphael. And you can see as those two areas begin to move into the Caribbean by next Tuesday, this is not today, this is next Tuesday, notice how our probabilities start to go up just a little bit more in the Caribbean, that very, very infamous spot. This whole area has been hot for activity pretty much the entirety of the hurricane season. We've had wave after wave, disturbance after disturbance, and gyre after gyre forming up over Central America, southern Mexico, and kicking storms up into the Gulf of Mexico and for our neighbors down there in Centam, as well as the Greater Antilles. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on what happens there. I am not going to show you the GFS for the sake of your own sanity and for mine as well, because I know a lot of folks are probably taking to the Twitter sphere or the X, Instagram, everywhere, YouTube, and probably talking about how we have another major hurricane coming for November, and we don't know yet. So with that being said, here's a little bit of a takeaway. I wanted to bring this up because I love to break everything down, wrap it up into a nice summary. What we're tracking, because we have multiple features out there, Raphael is going to continue to strengthen. Cayman Islands, you need to be buttoning up your prep right now. Conditions are likely to start going downhill over the next 1 to 3 hours. You're probably running out of time even as we speak as it begins to move beyond Jamaica. Jamaica, you are going to start to see a clearing trend over the next 6 to 12 hours. Category 1, very likely, despite that dry air still wrapping up into the center of circulation. circulation. Jamaica is seeing the worst right now. Cayman Islands, as that second bullet point mentions, you need to be finishing your preparations. And then on top of that, the track guidance does still show that potential recurve. I'll pull that up here in a second, and we are still watching that second area of interest out there that could be a wild card for the Bahamas and maybe even the state of Florida. So with that, let me go ahead and pull up a couple of things that I have here, and we're going to start off with the true color visible satellite shot. Now, I love this image because you can see exactly what's happening with the naked eye. And as you all can see, Raphael is definitely, quote, getting that look, as they say. It's starting to really take on that symmetrical characteristic that we see with intensifying hurricanes, albeit there is still a bit of dry air wrapped up in there. Let me refresh the satellite loop so it doesn't keep doing that refresh thing. There we go. So definitely headed towards the Cayman Islands. In fact, I'd argue, yeah, within the next 1 to 3 hours, that little preliminary forecast was spot on. It looks like within the next couple of hours, those conditions are going to start to go downhill. And as a result, they're going to see hurricane conditions very soon. And then Cuba, you are coming up next. And now I want you to look very closely at the center there. Now I can't really, let me see if I can zoom down on this. I might be able to. Here we go. We can get a little bit closer and I'll zoom the image in so y'all can see what I'm talking about. If you look at where the center is, it's right about there where I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but it has just moved to the west-northwest of Jamaica and it's moving right at, if not, it'll dodge Little Cayman just hard to the east there. And so what that tells me is we are on the right side of the National Hurricane Center cone currently. This is something that the H-WRF has been showing for a little while, and I have that model pulled up right here. I'll make sure to back the image down a little bit more so we can see it more clearly, and I'll walk you through it together. So this is the 12Z H-WRF, and the H-WRF is doing a fantastic job with the track of this system. If you look, it takes it right over Little Cayman, if not just a nudge to the east of Little Cayman, of the Cayman Islands, and then into western Cuba, deepening to a Category 2 potentially as it comes out into the Gulf of Mexico as a weakened Category 1. From there, we're watching Key West and southwest Florida for any potential tropical storm-like impacts as this system works its way further into the Gulf of Mexico, and then it begins to feel that tug brought on by the high pressure. But notice it does stay closer to our coastline. That is the west coast of Florida there, ladies and gentlemen. That's just off to the east of Raphael. So we will likely see an increase in our overall rain chances. We'll probably see bouts of heavier rainfall and maybe a stray severe thunderstorm peppered in there, depending on how large this system is once it starts that weakening trend in the Gulf of Mexico and starts to unravel. And then from there, it moves off towards the west. And as you can see, falls apart, which is good news. And this has been echoed across much of our model platforms, thankfully. Real quick, I just want to show you this. This is our velocity potential anomaly for the rest of November into December. There are still going to be some favorable pieces in the uppermost portion of our atmosphere that could keep tropical activity, at least tropical low pressures out there in the Caribbean and out there over the western Atlantic basin away from Africa. So we're definitely going to still have a lot to watch over the next couple of weeks, unfortunately, as we approach the Thanksgiving holiday. But nonetheless, we're going to keep you as updated as we possibly can with your pinpoint accurate forecast here at News 6. Myself, Jonathan Kagis, and the rest of the Pinpoint Weather team will be helping you every step of the way, just as we have the entire hurricane season. So we look forward to having you along for the ride. Please consider subscribing to both the News 6 channel as well as the Just Weather channel. We have a lot of very good content coming your way over the next couple of weeks as we get fully into the holiday season and hopefully can put the hurricane season behind us. And with that being said, I'll take a couple immediate questions and see what happens here. Carbon fiber over on the News 6 channel, are the models still indicating that the Atlantic AOI being a weak low pressure? Yes, they are. So for those of you who may not have access to the comments, we have a question over on the News 6 YouTube channel regarding that yellow blob I showed you on National Hurricane Center. It is still expected to be fairly weak. If that amps up at all, we will let you know. Dale over on Just Weather, will it make it into the Gulf, though, and what day? It will definitely make it into the Gulf by about November 7th, so another day or two is when we will likely see it enter the Gulf of Mexico and probably continue on a northwest trajectory as it does so. Donna over on Just Weather. How much rain for the southwest coast right now? On average, I would prepare for anywhere between 2 to 4 inches. It might not be sustained and continuous, depending on what Raphael looks like after it exits Cuba, but you will likely see bouts of heavier rainfall and a stray thunderstorm or two. Jad, once again, over on Just Weather. What will happen for the east coast of Florida? Nothing too crazy right now. We're watching that low pressure system off our east that's approaching the Turks and Caicos. But if anything big comes our way in terms of developing that feature, we will definitely let you know. But with that being said, folks, I know that was a very small blip of time for a Q&A. Please drop any additional questions, comments, or concerns you have in the comments section down below on the Just Weather channel and the News 6 channel. Thank you to our News 6 Plus viewers as well. This is going to be the conclusion of our tropical update today. I hope we have you in for next time. Should be as early as tomorrow. We'll talk tropics with you again at the same time, same place at 11:30. But until then, this is the News 6 Digital Weather Center signing out. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.